What is up, guys? Stark here. I'm back again for day 8 of the 25 Days of Fate, and in today's video I am doing the character spotlight for Gorgon. So this is another attempt at getting Medusa right, and unfortunately once again, in my opinion, they fall short of doing so. But this one is going to be a 4-star Avenger, so this is really cool to get another Avenger in the game. But she's not the best character in the world. She's definitely not bad, and I do kind of prefer her to the Lancer version, who I was a little bit too critical of last night. But again, maybe I just don't like Medusa as a character. But I personally prefer the 3-star version. But this 4-star version Avenger isn't awful. There's just a few things that I don't really like about the character, and I'll go ahead and explain them as we go along. As for her stats, though, she's going to go up to level 80, and at level 80 she will have 10,197 HP and 10,706 attack, ranking her 97th overall in HP and 36th overall in attack. If you do decide to grail her out, she will end up with 12,364 HP and 12,963 attack. So immediately, as you can look at her stats here, they're not really high, they're not really good, and for an Avenger who doesn't really have many class advantages, you're not going to be doing a lot of damage with this character. I mean, she does have skills to make up for that, but as far as base damage goes, unless you're going against a ruler or a berserker, you're not going to be able to get much out of this character. And then for their other stats, for star absorption is 29, star generation is 6%, and noble phantasm generation on the attack is 0.37, and on defense is 5%. So again, this goes back to her bad stats. She does not have good star absorption at all. It's pretty awful in my opinion. And star generation is 6%, which is not very good either. And the noble phantasm generation is pretty solid. Being an Avenger, they usually have pretty good noble phantasm generation, but it definitely could be better. As for her skills, she does have a pretty solid kit of skills. The first one being the monstrous strength A+, which will increase her own attack for 1 turn. This will be a 50% increase at level 10 on a 5-turn charge time. So this is going to be a really good skill. It's probably her best skill overall, being able to get a huge bonus to your attack on a 5-turn charge time. So you're going to be able to use this multiple times in the fight, ideally. And then for her second skill is going to be the Demonic Metamorphosis B, which will grant herself guts 1 time over the course of 5 turns, and it will also increase her own critical damage for 3 turns. So on paper, this looks like a good skill. You get 3,000 HP on the revive at level 10, a 50% increase to your critical damage on a 7-turn charge time. So the charge time is a little bit higher, but again, it looks pretty good on paper. However, there's the huge glaring fact that Gorgon's star absorption is trash, and you're not going to be getting stars with her, so you're not going to be able to make use of the critical damage increase, and this is basically a wasted skill outside of the guts. And then for her final skill is going to be the Mystic Eyes A++, which has a chance to stun 1 enemy for 1 turn. So this is a really good skill. Being able to stun the enemy is always nice. It is on a 6-turn charge time, and it will go up to 105% at level 10. So there's nothing else to say here. Stuns are always nice to have, and it definitely helps her kit be improved upon greatly, being able to stun. It's not limited to just being males, like the Lily version being the charm skill. So you could use this to stun any character. So that's nice, and like I said, she has a good kit of skills. The second effect of the second skill is a little questionable because you're not going to get star absorption or stars on her unless you have some sort of outside help. But other than that, her kit of skills is actually pretty good, and it is one of the higher points of this character in general. Moving on to her passives, she has the typical Avenger set, the first one being the Avenger B, which will reduce her party's debuff resistance by 8%, and then it will also increase her own noble phantasm generation rate when taking damage by 18%. So this one's really nice. When you take damage, you get more noble phantasm generation, and that'll help, fill her gauge faster. The second one is going to be the Oblivion Correction C, which will increase her own critical damage by 6%. Again, this is nice, but you're not going to get a lot of stars, so it really is kind of pointless. And the final one is the Self-Restoration Magical Energy A, which will charge her own Noble Phantasm gauge by 3.8 every single turn. Moving on to her Ascension, as a Avenger she has a weird requirement for her Ascensions, But for her first Ascension, she's going to need 8 Serpent Jewels and 8 Evil Bones, as well as 50,000 Quantum Pieces. For her second Ascension, she's going to need 8 Deadly Poisonous Needles, 8 Chains of Fools, and 150,000 Quantum Pieces. For her third Ascension, she's going to need 8 Primordial Lanugos, 8 Void Dusts, 500,000 Quantum Pieces. And for her fourth and final Ascension, she is going to need 8 Cursed Beast Gallstones, 8 Claws of Chaos, and 1.5 million Quantum Pieces. As for her skill enhancements, to max out a skill from 1 to 10, you are going to need 8 Evil Bones, 8 Chains of Fool, 10 Serpent Jewels, 10 Deadly Poisonous Needles, 10 Tear Stones of Blood, 12 Primordial Lanugos, 12 Heart of the Foreign Gods, 12 Cursed Beast Gallstones, 1 Crystallized Lore, and 27,200,000 Quantum Pieces. Now moving on to her command card deck and her Noble Phantasm. For her command card deck, she has 1 Quick, 2 Arts, 2 Buster, and the hit counts are going to be 3 on the Quick, 5 on the Arts, and 3 on the Buster, with 5 on her extra attack. So she has some really good hit counts on her command cards, but she has really low Noble Phantasm generation, so you're not going to be getting a whole lot out of that. But again, she is an Avenger, so she's going to be able to get natural Noble Phantasm generation, which kind of offsets it, and you should be able to get decent generation overall on your Noble Phantasm. As for her Noble Phantasm, it is a Buster card, which is nice because you'll be able to make Buster Brave Chains, and this will deal damage to all enemies, as well as charge your party's Noble Phantasm gauge by 10%, and on the overcharge, it will inflict Curse on all enemies for 5 turns. So this is a pretty decent Noble Phantasm. It's not going to do a whole lot of damage outside of buffing it up, but being able to charge your party's Noble Phantasm gauge is going to be very helpful. I wish it wasn't just a flat 10%. I wish it increased as you increase the level and the charge. But what can you do about that? You know, it's still nice to get that extra 10%. Sometimes that's all you need to get party members' Noble Phantasm generated completely. But overall, though, it really does lack damage, and it's about mid-tier for damage. You know, obviously if you buff it up and stuff like that, it'll do more damage and be a little bit more viable, but on its own, it's just going to be very lackluster as far as the damage it dishes out. Moving on to some of the craft essences you could use on this character. First up is going to be her maximum bond craft essence, which is going to be the Crysayer. And while equipped, this will increase Buster card effectiveness and Noble Phantasm gain of all of your allies by 10% while on the field. So this is a pretty good one for her, being able to increase her Buster card effectiveness and her Noble Phantasm generation, which she lacks pretty well. So this would be a good balance to kind of solve a few of her problems. Another one you could use is Kaleidoscope to get her Noble Phantasm gauge increased by 80% or 100% if max limit broken at the start of the battle. Being able to do this will let you fire off your Noble Phantasm very quickly, especially in the earlier waves, being able to get the extra generation for your allies gauge. And sometimes that'll be what you're looking for. You could use it in farming and things like that. But again, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, so there probably are many other options you could use out there as opposed to her. Another good one to use is going to be Seal Designation Enforcer. But putting this on will give her an increased gather rate of 600%, so you'll be able to actually get stars to use to do the damage and being able to make use of her critical damage increases. So this is a pretty good one to use. Depending on your team setup, I'd probably do something with critical star, gather rate, or absorption. You could also go ahead and use the limited 0 over for the Buster card increase if you decide to just forget about doing the critical damage and focus purely on using her Buster cards to deal damage. So again, focusing on the fact that Gorgon has no star generation or star absorption, you could pair her with Brynhild, who has the ability to increase Gorgon's star absorption pretty significantly, which will help Gorgon get stars and do more damage. You could also pair her with William Shakespeare and be able to get the increase to the Buster card effectiveness. He also does have the ability to increase Gorgon's Noble Phantasm gauge and their star generation rate. So, not so much on the star generation rate. If that would have been star absorption instead, then William Shakespeare would have been like an amazing character to pair her with, even though he already is really good. But he can fix a lot of Gorgon's problems, and if you just have some other way of Gorgon getting star absorption, then you're pretty good to go. As for her stats and her star rankings, for stats she's going to get 4 stars. She doesn't really have that good of stats, honestly. As a 4-star, she has very low HP. Her attack stats are pretty good, but overall they just don't compete with some of the other characters, especially for an Avenger. Like, if you have Jolter, you'll probably never use this character, but I know obviously not everyone's going to have her, so if you do get her and you do need her against Rulers or Berserkers, then she could be a viable option, but really, her stats just aren't that good. As for her skills are the high point of this character, and she's going to get 4.5 stars. She has a good attack boost, she has a stun skill, and she does have a gut skill. Now, if you can find some way of getting her stars, then her second skill is going to be very good, being able to get the increase in critical damage. You know, it's going to take a little bit of help in order to get that to happen, but she does have a very good kit of skills overall. As for her normal Phantasm, she's going to get 4 stars. It doesn't do that much damage, it's like pretty much mediocre as far as that goes, but it does have some pretty good extra effects, being able to charge the party's normal Phantasm gauge and being able to inflict curse on the enemies is going to be very helpful. So it does get a few bonus points there for that, which will push it up to 4 stars. For her survivability, she's only getting 3.5 stars. She does not have very good HP stats, and her only way of survivability is going to be that gut skill. So I really can't give her too much more in survivability. And her versatility is also going to get 3.5 stars. If you want to use Gorgon, you're going to have to build a team around Gorgon, and that's not necessarily wrong, but it definitely limits the amount of teams you can put her in. And the fact that she is an Avenger means she's only really going to be effective against Rulers and Berserkers, and especially Rulers. And there aren't that many fights with Rulers in the game, so she's not going to be seeing a lot of playtime. And because of that, she's only going to get the 3.5 stars. And that will give her overall ranking a 4 out of 5. Again, I said this previously, she's not a terrible character, but she has a lot of flaws and she needs a lot of help. And being an Avenger sometimes is just not going to be worth the hassle to try and make her as good as she can be. So that's going to wrap up this spotlight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to check the links below to my Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and Discord. And as always, throughout the month of December, I am doing my Fate Granddaughter giveaway, so there will be a link in the description for that. And if you haven't joined that, please do that for a chance to win some nice Saint Quartz. And I will see you guys next time.